Yes, you're audible. Yes, you're audible.
Good morning, all. It gives me immense pleasure to extend a very warm welcome to you all on the behalf of IUC IPRS to the second day of the online FTP on innovation and acquisition of IPR under Ethel Academy FTP scheme organized by India University Center for IPR Studies, CUSAT. Now, if I may please invite Dr. I.G. Retish, Assistant Professor, IUC IPRS, to introduce the resource person. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. First of all, let me welcome all the participants to the day 2, session 1 of this 5-day online Atal FDP on innovation and acquisition of intellectual property rights. So today we have an eminent personality from LexOrbis. So as you're aware, we have in fact resource persons from various law firms, reputed patent IP law firms from across India. So in this endeavor, today we have Dr. Ramani. So today's topic, she's, in fact, all the 3 sessions would be chaired by her today. So we'll introduce her in the first as well as the second session. Probably in the third session, we'll not be providing an introduction of the resource person. So ma'am, in this particular session is going to look at technology transfer and how it is fostering innovation over there. Ma'am has 15 years of experience in patent preparation and prosecution. She was working as a senior director with Clairvolex Knowledge Process Private Limited. I believe prior to joining LexOrbis, she was mentoring patent engineers and supervising the patent development team in Bangalore to ensure high quality of patent applications. Prior to this, she was a director at Intellectual Ventures. In this role, she was responsible for working with inventors from prominent Indian universities in the area of material science, polymer chemistry, and other related chemical sciences. And she was also an associate at Schwegman, Lundberg, and Wasner, Minneapolis, prior to joining Intellectual Ventures. I believe it is a firm based in US or Europe. She held the positions of an IP counsel with Philips Electronics India Limited and was a lead scientist with John of Welsh Technology Center, Bangalore. Before moving to IP and R&D, she was an assistant professor of one of the engineering colleges in Bangalore, and she has received her BTech and MTech in chemical engineering from Osmania University, Hyderabad. And she holds a PhD from IISc Bangalore. And she's also received her JD and LLM from the then Franklin Pierce Law Center. Now it is the University of New Hampshire School of Law. So as you can see, so ma'am has got diverse experience in academics and industry. And she also has both the background of science as well as science and technology and law as well. So JD is basically an equivalent to PhD. So with that brief introduction, ma'am, I hand over the forum to you.
Good morning, everyone. I thank the organizers and especially Dr. Ratish for giving me an opportunity to be with you all. Today, as Ratish mentioned, I am there with you for all the 3 sessions. So I have a little problem of speaking a little fast. So I try to repeat things so that you will be able to catch my points. Anywhere you can ask questions on through chat. You can ask me questions through organizers. You can get my email ID. You can get my phone number. You can always approach me if you think that I can be of any help to you. So I will just share my screen and we can start our seminar. This would have been wonderful if I could have been with you all physically, but unfortunately, because of our COVID, so we had to do this virtually. So still, let's do together. And I first really congratulate all the participants who are the faculty members of different universities. You people are building the nation. You people are guiding the young minds. So such programs, maybe sometimes you feel that they may be boring or they may not be interesting, but now we try to give you the latest technologies. Please take them and pass it on to the younger generation, and such that our country prospers, we can do better as a team. Okay. So let's start with our presentation. Today I'll be talking about technology transfer. So we all know that product development for any company is very expensive, right? It's complex, it's expensive, it's time consuming. It may take millions and billions of dollars to develop one product. In-house R&D, these organizations will have their in-house R&Ds. Most of the big organizations have their in-house R&D, but they don't have solution for everything, right? So see, suppose you can see the figure, company is spending so much of money and the whole thing that company is owning is a bit. So remaining all, it's either cross-licensing, it's borrowing from someone, it's taking from someone else. So to build a product, we need a lot of coordination, lot of collaboration between different people, different organizations. Is that true only for semiconductors and telephones? No, it's the same story for pharma. To develop a drug and to take it from research to the product launch, it takes anywhere between 10 to 15 years. So how do we do that by our own? So nowadays, collaboration for innovation is new mantra for pharma. So not only the semiconductors or telephones or IT, we also have the collaboration. We need collaboration even in pharma sector. How about medical equipments? We have MRI scanners, CT scanners, all are mostly done by the major players in this field are GE, Philips, Siemens. So how do they work? They all have cross-licensing. Not one product is not developed by one company. They all have different participation in one scanner or one MRI machine, and they cross-license between each other. If you just look at this slide, very interesting slide, we have a lot of grants. Nowadays, Indian government is changing. We'll see a little later how are we doing about as a government. We have a lot of funds, a lot of research grants for basic research, right? So that's not an issue. So we have lots of money, a lot of grants at the part of the basic research or applied research. And the industry is ready to spend money to get a product out of the market. So that's also not an investment, and that's also not a problem. Where is the problem? The problem is converting the basic research or applied research to the product. There is a Death Valley, right? So we know universities have a lot of grants, industry is ready to spend money on the product development, but who will take the basic research and convert into a product and give it to the industry? So that's where is a problem. That is the Death Valley where we are looking at today. Okay, so how do we address these problems? These problems we can address just by this technology transfer. Okay, what is, sometimes it's called technology transfer, or some people also call it as transfer of technology, TOT, right? What is technology transfer? It's a process of transferring technology from a person or an organization to another person or an organization. It can be between universities, it can be small scale industries, medium scale industries, large industries, governments. It can be across geopolitical borders. It could be done formally. The technology transfer is done informally. Formally means we have proper documents. We will be seeing what are the documents we need for technology transfer. We can do openly, we can do secretly, because our companies doesn't want to, the big companies may not want to disclose whom they are working with. So it may be done secretly also. All this technology transfer is done basically to share skills, knowledge, technologies, manufacturing methods, etc., etc. Okay. Why technology transfer? It ensures that scientific and technological developments are accessible to a wide range of users. These wide range of users will further develop it. Like for example, if you talk about a university have a lot of facilities to do the basic research. They have research scholars, they have grants, they have laboratories, facilities, but they may not have money. So how to convert it to a full product? So what they can do, so the users in this case could be an industry. They can come and take the technology and further exploit the technology. Together, they make new products, processes, applications, or materials. As far as the global innovation matrix is concerned, we are doing very well. We are doing excellent. We are in the top 10 nations for research publications. Unfortunately, we are not there at the same position when it comes to commercialization of basic research. Why is that? So we'll be addressing some few issues now. Basically, this innovation is performed and catalyzed by three main pillars. These are the three stakeholders who can run the show. The first one is the government, second one is academia, you all, and industries. Lack of synergy between these stakeholders, that is the problem in India, that we are still at the minimum place with respect to the commercialization. So a strong industry academy ecosystem is the key for fostering our innovation. Industry, as I already mentioned, is always looking for new ideas, new products, but not at the basic research stage. At least they want a prototype, right? Otherwise, they can't risk so much of investment. So industry is always looking for, and at the same time, universities are always looking for a hand holding. Together, they can work to, they can make things better. So industry needs invention, academia needs taking up their inventions to a product. One thing we are till now we are doing that our industry and academia are working in silos. That should not happen. Okay. How does the industry, how does the academic research happens? Sometimes it can happen within the collaboration within the institution. I did my PhD from IISc. I worked on microbial cells. I'm a chemical engineer. So we didn't have facilities in microbial, to do any biological work. So I used to go to the microbiology department of IISc. So both my professor and the professor from microbiology department coordinated together, and I worked for both of them. So it's possible to collaborate within the institution. Now with the interdisciplinary courses in the interdisciplinary research, it's very, very common. People working in chemical engineering, biochemistry, or microbiology, or school of automation, everything is possible nowadays. So collaboration with an institution is the easiest way. So they work together, they may have funding, they may not have funding, they divide the work equally, they keep talking to each other to monitor the progress, and they'll have face-to-face. They're in the same campus, so they have face-to-face collaboration. This is an internal collaboration. We also have international research collaboration. Now it's becoming more and more international research collaboration. So why are we doing this international research collaboration? To gain global perspective of research problems, collaborating among research from different institutions of different countries, right? So international collaboration is also possible. Different countries are working together on the same problem. What else can be the best example other than COVID vaccine development? I will show you some results at the end of my talk. So in this case, communication may be a little difficult because people are across different nations, across different countries of the world. So they may do the collaboration through communication through emails or telephones. In this way, we can solve much more complex problems. And we all researchers get to work with similar interested people of different parts of the world. I just give an example. This is again an example of my alma mater. The Professor Rahul Rai of Chemical Engineering Department, he recently received a fund from the Human Frontier Science Program. I mean, this is one example. Maybe thousands of examples are there. I just give an example. Recently we heard about it. So he got a funding along with a professor from London, along with a professor from the US. So just see, the one fund is, so they all are working together to understand the fusion process, how the molecular fusion is happening. So the one is working on the microscope development, one is working on the computational modeling. So all three, one India, one London, one USA. So this international collaboration is also happening nowadays very frequently. Okay. Now we all said that industry is now, academy is ready. They get grants from government. They do international collaborations. They do inter-department collaboration. They could do within the institution. Fine. Now, how are the industry, academia, or universities are doing with respect to universities collaborations? So why do we need university industry collaboration? Because this propels the economic growth and it accelerates socio-economic development. The university industry collaboration results in skill development. It results in technology transfer. It can lead to startups. It can lead to it promotes the entrepreneurship. So university industry collaboration is really is the order of the need of the day. Just let's look at the globally how the countries, either developed countries, developing countries, how they are doing with respect to university industry collaboration before we look at India. Naturally, the first developed country when we talk about research and science comes to all of our minds is US. So what happened before 1980? US also doing not very great. Why is that? So universities generally get federal government funds. That is, the government gives the monies to the universities, and in the faculty works on the research, and they make the inventions, and they have to give back the inventions to the government. That is a story before 1980. So they develop the inventions. All the inventions will be given back to the government. why is that? The government thinks that the money what they are giving to the university is not their own money, it's public money. So they can't ask the universities to keep the invention. So the government used to take back the inventions, and government can give only the non-exclusive license. For example, the US federal government got an invention from the university. Then they give an pharma company comes and approaches them, and they give a non-exclusive license to pharma company X. Pharma company worked day and night, put a lot of resources, substantial amount of money, and they're ready with the product. Now the government comes and gives another non-exclusive license to their competitor. Why? So what happens? It will not be a good proposition for X, right? They spent so much of money, they did so much of work. Now why also got the non-exclusive license? So none of the industries were coming forward to come to the university research. So US government has nearly 28,000 patents they acquired, and only 4% were licensed. Remaining all were just lying with the government. So what do they do with the inventions? They are neither reaching the public, they are not doing anything, they are just lying with the government. Then in 1980, two senators, their names are Bay and Dole. They said, this is not how we should work on. Let the universities take back the inventions. Let the universities take the lead. Let the universities license. We will be there. We will be monitoring. Suppose if any invention is needed by government, we will definitely take it back. That is called margin rights. So university, the government has always margin rights. They are paying the money, right? So they have the capacity to take back the invention if they need it. So they said, let the university manage the whole show. That's it. Then the whole scenario of the US academic research changed. There are so many success stories. Vitamin D metabolites from the University of Wisconsin saw the market. The market now can see all these products because of this Bayh-Dole Act of the US. Hepatitis B vaccine came from University of California. Synthetic penicillin came from MIT. Cisplatin or carboplatin came from Michigan State University. So on and so forth. Now, how is the Silicon Valley's hub of technology, hub of startups? From where it come? It came from Stanford University. So once the government decided and gave the power, authority to the universities to take the inventions, nothing stopped. Okay, so this is the university story. This is a developed country. Now let's look at the Far East countries, how we are doing. So the data I'm showing may not be very recent one. I don't want you to, I just want you to get the gist how the different countries are doing and why are they doing. So Japan also started they have a hello.
நீங்க அதான் அங்கேதான் எடுத்துட்டு இருந்தீங்க.
Hello. Can you please mute? Okay. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Please, the participant, please mute it. Okay. So Japan, I will just take you through the developing the Far East countries. Still, they are doing better. So Japan has a law to strengthen the industrial technology. They are permitting the professors to hold management positions. They have a lot of TLOs. TLO is nothing but Technology Licensing Office. Some people call it as TTO, Technology Transfer Office, or some people call it as TLOs. So they have TLOs. They have encouraging the university startups. Then they have they have the basic law of intellectual property. They said now national universities are incorporated. They are not government agency anymore. All inventions are owned by the universities, and inventors retain more influence. See, every country now trying to implement something like Bayh-Dole Act to go further. So Japan also has a university technology management group. So all of them become members of the Association for University Intellectual Property and Technology Management Group. How about Korea? They also have an act. In 1972 itself, Korea has an act, and they said that universities can hold the titles, not the government. Even if the government is funding, universities can take the lead. They can hold the titles of the inventions. They can license it. They can transfer the technology. So they have TTOs were established. One faculty member is taking care of the technology transfer. There are thousands of spin-offs from the universities. China is doing well. They also have they have amended their science and technology law in 2008, and they said now institutions can own patents and inventions. They can own the computer software. They can have the integrated circuits. They can also own the Plant Varieties Act. So Chinese government has figured out 8 key areas and they are working on this. And now they have almost 50 science parks have been constructed and 6 companies are listed on the stock market. Taiwan also said that they have a science and technology basic line, which is in 1999, and they said academia owns intellectual property rights generated from government funding research. Incubator centers on campus are started. Malaysia has publicly funded research institution, rightful owners. See, even Malaysia recognized on 1983, they said that the institutions which are getting the government fund still can own the intellectual property. They can still use their intellectual property for transferring the technology. Singapore is doing very well. They have this National University of Singapore, Nanyang Technological University, and they have doing very well. They have an industry and technology relationship officers. They have a ITTOs, that is in Innovation and Technology Transfer Office. They have established so many things. Indonesia has basically worked on 3 pillars. It's still a very small country. It's still trying to do something. They don't have still that higher education itself is a problem there, but they have believed that the knowledge can be created through 3 pillars: education, research, and both education and research for the use of community development. They have started with the technology transfer of different universities have started now using the technology transfer. Thailand, unfortunately, the government is not supporting much. They are saying that Thailand is still backward. It says that it's not fair to spend the taxes on some companies' government money, and small and mid, they prefer to import technology. And Vietnam is still way back. So this generally, why I told you is every country is trying to see the importance of technology transfer. The universities have a lot of technology. Somehow it has to reach the public. That's the whole aim of this whole thing. Okay, now let's look at our country. We do have scientific policy resolutions starting from 1958. So first policy was in 1958. As a result of scientific policy, we have ISRO, DRDO, all the national laboratories were started in 1958. Then we moved to technology policy statement in 1983. As a result of that, we have Technology Development Fund, we have TIFAC, all these things started. We are also emerging. Right? If we have in 1958, we have science policy. In 1983, we called it as technology policy. In science and technology policy. As a result of 2003 change, we have ICERs, new ICERs have been started, we have new ICERs, have so many things. Now we have now if you see, we have added a new word, we have policy statement, we have now science, technology and innovation policy. As a result of this policy, we are doing almost emerging, say, one of the global players in 2013. So we are moving from 1958 to 2013. If you see, 1953, we called it as technology. In 2003, we called it science and technology. And in 2013, we call it as science, technology, and innovation policy. So we are moving towards innovation. Okay. How about our, do we have any law, any bill or anything for university industry collaboration? Unfortunately, we didn't have. As soon as we have the Bayh-Dole Act, we also try to do something that is called as Public Funded Intellectual Property Bill. Okay, unfortunately, the bill was withdrawn. It could not become an act. So why is that? So we can just see the problem. So there are some problems with the bill. The first concern was they didn't have, the policy makers took the decision on their own and they just drafted the bill without consulting at least important organizations like IISc and IITs. They just drafted the bill without taking any clauses for healthcare. India is a developing country and we need a lot of support for healthcare. Those particular clauses were not there. They have basically the whole bill was based on IT sector and did not cover any research. And we did not segregate between the basic research and applied research. We do need some basic research to be given to the public, right? Some has to be in the public domain for us. We are developing country. We need healthcare facilities. So all can't be patented and all can't be segregated from the general public. That clause was not taken into the account. And the bill doesn't say what do you mean by intellectual property. It also says that if the university getting money from the government, if they don't disclose IP, it will be leading to strong penalties. That really scares the universities, and no proper definition how the royalty is shared. Okay, government grants the money to the university, university develops a technology, university transfer the technology to industry. What happens to the inventors who worked all through? How much royalty will they get? That was not clearly mentioned. And there is no distinction between the inventions that to be patented and that has to be put in the public domain. And also the industries are a little concerned because the universities are not very well equipped except for the top universities. Not many universities are very well equipped. They have lack of resources, poor infrastructure. So industries may not even approach the universities for technology transfer. These are all the concern. One more concern is it was just drafted like Bayh-Dole Act without assessing the real grassroots realities, right? We can't compare ourselves with the US. So, but when the bill was drafted, they never took care, they never really worried about how is the act going to affect. So this is one concern for the bill to get passed. So they're also worried that only those universities who have strong industry contacts may be able to take it forward and commercialize their inventions rather than all the small universities. So these are all the concerns. With these concerns, unfortunately, the bill has been withdrawn from the parliament in 2008 and we didn't have any act then. So basic reason, the basic failure of this bill is that it does not protect the public interest. Okay. So now we have something called National IPR Policy in 2016. Maybe this addressed some of the issues of the bill. The bill did not address many issues, right? So this, they tried, again, the government has developed a policy that's called National IPR Policy in 2016. So this bill, policy received the cabinet approval in May 2016. The aim of the policy is to establish a conducive atmosphere for exploiting the intellectual property for economic, social, and cultural development of India. See, in the previous bill, when we thought there is no cultural development, that was only concentrated on IT sectors, but this policy is really taking care of all those things. It was
request all the participants to kindly mute their microphones.
Okay. So this policy involves a cottage industry and academic institution equally. See, so they took, if it is a small academic institution or even if it is a cottage industry, still this policy is taking care of everyone equally for the creation and utilization of AP while balancing the public interest. This is the main concern of the bill, right? That never took care of public interest. So this policy, the policy makers have taken the issues of the bill and now they try to correct them, and they have the policy now which can balance the public interest. So what is the statement of the policy? It says, we need an India where creativity and innovations are simulated by intellectual property for the benefit of all, right? So it's not for any strong big universities, it benefits of all. An India where intellectual property promotes advancement in science and technology, arts and culture, traditional knowledge, and biodiversity resources. So we are a traditional knowledge country, right? We have so much of traditional knowledge. The previous bill did not account because they tried to copy the Bayh-Dole Act, and the US doesn't really boast about their traditional knowledge. Unlike India, India is so much, we have so much knowledge of traditional knowledge, and that is not being taken care in the previous bill, whereas now the national policy has taken care of traditional knowledge and biodiversity resources are taken care. And the mission statement also says that we need an India where knowledge is the main driver of development and Knowledge owned is transformed into knowledge shared. That is nothing but your technology transfer. Knowledge owned is transformed into knowledge shared. So universities own the knowledge that will be shared to the industries, and there exists a technology transfer, and that forces the innovation. So this is the vision statement of National IPR policy. So now they say that this policy will stimulate a dynamic, vibrant, and balanced IPR in India to foster creativity and innovation, and focus on enhancing access to healthcare, food security, environmental protection, other than among other vital social, economic, technological importance. That means IT. Besides that, we have to take care. The IP will focus on healthcare, food security, environmental protection, etc., etc. Okay, so what are the objectives of the national policy? First, IPR awareness. So now all these programs are actually, that is the reason why we have so many programs being conducted during this period, to reach to the academics, the academia, and tell them, faculty members, or tell the research scholars, take your innovations, make them into IPR, and try to pass on to the industries and take them to the market. So IPR awareness is the main goal of the main objective of the national IPR policy. Generation of IPRs, okay, and legal and legislative frameworks. Now we have strong IPR laws, right? We have a that balances the interests of the owners and the larger public interest. See, throughout the policy, if you can see the word public interest, public interest, public interest, right? That is what the country is looking at. That is what the policymakers are looking at. Administration and management, to modernize and strengthen the service-oriented IPR administration. If you look at the patent offices before and now, there is a lot of change. There is tremendous improvement in the patent offices. Before, the patent used to take more than 8 to 10 years to get a grant. Now we are recently I worked on a case where I got the grant in 8 months. It's a startup, so they have an expedited examination. We will do all those things in the afternoon. So they requested for an expedited examination, and we got a grant. On November 13th, we filed the patent application, and we got a notice of elements. I mean, we got a grant letter last week. So within 8 months, now I have a patent in India. So, and now there are also the IPR policy is emphasizing on commercialization of IPR. So you do something, make a patent and sleep on it, it's not good, right? So that patent has to somehow be commercialized. So commercialization of IPR is extremely important, and now the government is looking at that. Enforcement and adjudication. This is another problem in India, right? The courts, if someone infringes your IP, and you go to the court, and it takes enormous amount of time. So small players cannot afford that much of time, cannot afford that much of money. So generally they lose heart, and they will not even go further. So now government is trying to do, how do you enforce your IP? You have a patent, you have a trademark, you have a copyright, you go enforce. So especially universities, this is especially with respect to universities. So government is trying to strengthen the enforcement and adjudicator mechanisms for combating the IPR infringements. If someone is infringing your trademark, if someone is infringing your patent and using your patent without your knowledge, government has come up with some laws. Human capital development, to strengthen and expand human resources, institutions, and capabilities for teaching, training, research, and skill building in IPRs. So this whole, I think this 5-day seminar itself is an example of this point, what I'm talking about, right? So for these 5 days, you people are learning. Yesterday, I think you learned about research in universities, and today I'm going to talk about IPRs, and afternoon we are talking about how do we register the different IPRs in India. Now we are talking about technology transfer. Tomorrow, you people are talking about patent searching, and you are doing hands-on experience, hands-on training on patent searching. So this is nothing but we are trying to develop the faculty of our nation, and the faculty, why? The faculty in turn take their knowledge, take their learnings to the students who then take it forward, right? So National IPR policy also set up a professionally run cell for IPR promotion and management that is called CPAM. CPAM has been developed by this IPR policy. What is CPAM? CPAM. CPAM has been set up under the guidance of Department for the Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade. So, okay, this we are seeing the academic side. Now, what is the government doing for the industry? So, they have a CPAM cell has been set up by the government under the National IPR Policy 2016. So, this CPAM facilitates promotion, creation, and commercialization of IP assets. So, we are moving definitely towards technology transfer. Recently, CPAM has prepared model guidelines for the IPR policy for academic institutions. It just released in September 2019. We have published an article also on this. So we condensed the model guidelines and we have written an article. It's been there in the internet. You can just check that. So these are the model guidelines for the IPR policy, especially for the academic institutions. So basically, these guidelines are drafted to empower all the stakeholders, not only the academic, researcher, academic institution, external partner, right? You are the inventor, your institution is the academic institution, and we have an industry partner. So you also have to be benefited, right? Your university definitely will get funding and they'll be benefited, but as an inventor, as a researcher, so you also have to get benefited. So these guidelines clearly mention that you all are empowered and in the ecosystem while ensuring promotion and innovation and smooth operations. So the guidelines aim to protect IP rights generated by faculty and students of the academic institution. They clearly lay down the fair and transparent administrative process for ownership control. See, you are a researcher, so you are an inventor, or your university applies your patent on your behalf. So university is an applicant. So these model guidelines clearly aim to protect the IP rights and lay down very fair and clear rules, like what is the inventor going to get back, what is the share of the university, what is the share of the inventor. So there are very clear and fair and transparent processes are there. It throws light on assignment of IP rights. How do you assign your IP rights? As a research student, as a faculty, you have to assign your inventions to the academic institution. So what do I mean by that? If you have developed something within the scope of your employment, that belongs to your employer. Suppose you are a researcher working on developing a drug for tuberculosis, for example. So whatever research comes and whatever you are doing, as soon as you join the department, I'm not sure about the small universities, but the first thing what we do is we sign an agreement, right? That is called assignment agreement. We assign all our rights to the university, our employers. I work for GE and Philips. So at the first day of orientation, we basically try to fill the forms. The first form is confidentiality agreement or non-disclosure agreement. I will not disclose, I'll keep all the confidential information and we'll sign that. And we also sign assignment agreement where we say that all the research, all the IP I'm going to generate during course of my employment will become to the employer. I think the same rule works even for the research scholars, except for the BTech students. I think there is a different rule because they are not really doing this thing. So, but research scholars and faculty members, they have to assign their research to the university. Okay, if you are doing the drug development for TB in the university, that belongs to the university. You go home and start developing a potato. You want to grow a potato and you are doing on your own time, nothing to do with the university, that belongs to you. So you have to be really careful. So other than that, you are working on one culture for developing one drug, come back home and do another culture, that again belongs to the university. Be very careful. So you have to have a clear demarcation. As I said, you are working for doing something for the tuberculosis in your university and coming back home and doing potato growing. That has nothing to do with your research, nothing to do with your resources used from the university, right? It's your own free time. You are doing at your own will. So that belongs to you. So we have to have a clear understanding between what you own and what university owns. And it also, the guidelines, the model guidelines define sharing of IP of generated revenues. I told you, right? There is a breakup, how much the university owns, how much the research scholar gets. So there is a breakup in the royalty sharing. These guidelines promote collaborations between academia and industry. So these guidelines also tell that every university or every college should have an IP cell for supporting innovations of students, research scholars, and faculty members. So these are the model guidelines. It's a big list. This is the gist of the model guidelines. It's a 4 or 5 pages. Model guidelines were released in September 2019, which clearly indicates what academic institution do, what is patent, it defines everything. What is IP, which IP is what, which covers everything. The model guidelines are available on the internet. You can just look at it. It's released in September 2019. So these guidelines help the academic institutions how to share their how to generate IP first, and how to share their IP, how to commercialize their IP, and how do they monetarily get benefited out of this technology transfer. So this is a model guidelines. Okay, now let's look at, these are all the government part. So how do we do it? What exactly happens? What do you mean by technology transfer? How it happens? Okay, you are a research scholar, right? So you have invented something. The first step is you have to prepare an invention disclosure. Invention disclosure is a simple format where you express, okay, I have done this. This has been done already in the prior art. Previously they couldn't solve this problem. Now I am solving this problem in this way. This is my research. So you prepare a invention disclosure. Each university, each organization have a different format. But we will see in the afternoon session how do you prepare an invention disclosure. So it varies. It's basically what you have to do in the invention disclosure. You have to clearly explain what you have done with all the data, and what are the advantages, what are the disadvantages in the already existing market, how we are solving the problem. All those things if you clearly write and give to the Technology Transfer Office. And you also have to mention the funding details. Who funded you? CSIR, DBT, Tata's. Who funded you? Is a private funding. You have to clearly give the details to the Technology Transfer Office or Technology Licensing Office. And name of the inventors. Who all are the inventors? You should be careful. See, if you are a research scholar and you're a professor, so your professor's idea and you also together thought about the problem and solved. So you both are research, you both are the inventors. Instead of that, you have a lab assistant who just helped you. He will not be an inventor, right? He did not contribute anything to the invention. What he did, he just executed. You asked him add chemical A to chemical B, or wash the apparatus, or heat the liquid. He did only on your command. He did the things. He didn't do any intellectually. He did not contribute. So the lab assistant or the person who just helped you, the BTech student who just helped you, will not be an inventor. To be an inventor, you have to contribute to the invention technically. So you are a professor, and I mean, it depends on the circumstances. You can define who are the inventors. In India, it may not be a big issue, but in the US, inventorship is a big issue. So suppose you don't name, or you name someone by mistake, it's going to create a big issue later. So be careful. In India, it may not be that strict, but anyway, it's better to be truthful and give you the correct inventors. And public disclosures or publication. Did you publish your research anywhere already? Are you going to publish tomorrow? Or are you going to go to a conference and publish? All these things you have to tell the TTO, the Technology Transfer Office. Why? We will just soon learn little more detail in the afternoon. There are 3 requirements for a patent application. It has to be novel, it has to be inventive, it has to have industrial applicability. We will learn little later. Novelty means it has to be the first. It should not have been known to anyone in the world before. So that's why it is important for you to mention to the Technology Transfer Office whether you have already published, whether you already made a public disclosure in a conference, did you put a poster presentation. You have to make all these things clear to your TTO, because if you already, suppose you published and you can't file a patent, we will learn in the afternoon more details. If you already went to a conference and put a poster, you cannot patent your invention. So these are the things a researcher submits to the TTO. Now, your job is over. As a researcher, you have written everything and you gave it to the TTO. Now TTO will sit. They have TTO again will have a Technology Licensing Office or Technology Transfer Office will have their own committee. They all evaluate. So they look for the invention disclosures for its patentability. What is the patentability? What are the conditions for patentability? Novelty, inventiveness, and industrial applicability. Okay, and commercial value. Okay, and then also look at the commercial value, right? It involves money. to draft a patent application, to file a patent application, it's expensive process. So the TTO will not be able to convert every research into a patent. So they all will evaluate, see the commercial value, and then decide what kind of IP should we give. Should we protect it under copyright? Should we protect it under a patent? What kind of, is it a design? Should we protect a design? So the TTO evaluates the mode of IP protection. Then they file a patent application. So I just told you, right, for patentability, it has to be novel, it has to have an inventive step, it has to have industrial applicability. So the Technology Transfer Office applies, and on average, it takes 4 to 6 years. Now I think it's reduced a bit, and it expires in 20 years. The patent will take 4 to 6 years to get issued, and it will expire in 20 years from the date of filing. The next one is, now they'll start looking at the market. Now we have a patent, or we have a patent application. We'll approach the industries. We'll go and show them the technology and try to market our invention. That is, the TTO does that. Then the TTO licenses the patents. What kind of licenses are there? There are 2 types of licenses. One is exclusive license, and another one is non-exclusive license. Generally, TTO will never assign the patents. What do you mean by assign patents? Assigning patents is like losing the rights. It will become, if you are assigning, you are an assigner, your assignee will get all the rights. So generally, university technology transfer offices will not assign the patents. You can either assign the patents or you can license the patents. Always TTOs will do the licensing of patents. What is exclusive license? What is the licensing? First of all, licensing is a contract between a licensor and licensee. In this case, university will be the licensor and an industry will be a licensee. So licensor grants the licensee to practice the technology claimed in the patent. Okay, university will say, okay, industry, please go ahead, use my technology. You can commercialize it. What is exclusive licenses? You can give, other than, no person other than the licensee can exploit the patent rights. So that is exclusive. The name, as the name indicates, it's exclusive. If you are assigning to one person, he can only use the license. That is an exclusive license. This exclusivity can be geographical area. You can say, okay, I'm giving you exclusive license only to practice in India. So you can go give it to another customer, another client in the US. So exclusivity can be to a geographical area. It could be a technological application. Okay, I'm giving you my patent. You practice only in the automobile industry. Do not use in the domestic industry. So it's suppose you imagine that you have developed something, a detergent solution which can be used for automobile applications. The same detergent can also be used for washing machines at home. So you can give one licensee to exclusively for automobile. You can give to another licensee exclusively for domestic purposes. So that's also possible. Exclusivity is not for one person. You can exclusive, but be very careful to draft all these clauses in your licensing agreements. So drafting licensing agreements is a big course in itself. It's not easy. See, as long as things go smoothly, there is no issue at all. If one thing comes back, one thing bites you back, then we'll immediately look at licensing agreement. What did we write it? That will be too late. So you have to be extremely careful while drafting the licensing agreements. You need a legal help to draft those clauses. So you have to have the carve-outs, right? These things, when you are saying that, okay, I'm giving X to practice, to an exclusive license to X to practice only in India. So all these things should be there in your licensing agreement. As a non-exclusive license is the easiest one. So you can have any number of people can get. Licensor also can use. In exclusive license, licensor also cannot use, right? Licensor also needs permission from the licensee, whereas in this case, licensor also can practice in the non-exclusive license. Okay. The last step is commercialization. Say we learned 5 steps, right? Fifth step is licensing, and the last step in technology transfer process is commercialization. Okay. Once licensing agreement has been executed, so TTO will not stop there. TTO will monitor. TTO will look at the compliance of the milestones. See how your royalty is shared at each milestone. Okay, we started the production. We made this many thousands of products. We made this much money. So every milestone has to be captured, and the TTO keeps on monitoring. Suppose, imagine that your licensee has taken your invention and he's not practicing, right? That is wrong, right? Your invention is not reaching the market. That is not what you want. This is generally done by the big companies. Big companies, what they do, they just capture the license and they just sit on it. They will not work on it. Such that it will not be given to anyone else. They will not practice it. In that case, you have a right to revoke the license. So all these conditions have to be put in your licensing agreement. So the TTO keeps on monitoring and they distribute the revenue accordingly to IP policy. Okay, so what are the technology transfer document? This is a process. We have 6 steps in process. I mean, it's not hard and fast rule that they have to have 6 steps. It generally, I just gave an example. Each TTO, each TLO has their own way of handling things. So what are the documents we need? We have to have inventor assignment agreements. Did I not say that? We said that as an inventor, you have to assign your rights to your employer. Confidentiality agreement or non-disclosure agreements, licensing agreement, what is the IP available, all these things we have to keep in ready for the technology transfer. Okay, important clauses you have to consider in licensing. So what technology are we licensing it? Are we giving our patents? Are we giving our copyrights? Are we giving our designs? So it has to be very clearly mentioned. You have to have a grant clause. What are we granting? It has to be clear. Is it an exclusive license? Is it a non-exclusive license? Can I transfer it to others? Can we revoke the license? Yes, if you're not practicing the technology as according to my satisfaction, I will revoke the license. Territory, which territory am I giving the license? Can you sub-licensing? Can I sub-license? I am a licensee. Can I give this to my another licensee? Can I sub-license it? All these things have to be in your technology agreements. Okay. Now we have looked at so much of theory. We learned about the policy statements. We learned about technology transfer. We learned how the developed country is doing. We have learned about developing countries, how they are doing. Now let's see real examples, real lifetime examples. I could not capture everything. Whatever I could get from my knowledge, I am sharing some examples of industry-university collaborations in India. IISc is working with Wipro. IIT Kharagpur is working with Wipro. So basically, they are all developing the robotics, 5G, and metal 3D printing. IIT Guwahati is working with Samsung. In this case, Samsung has started a digital academy to train more than 300 students of IIT Guwahati, and Samsung may absorb them. So see, the students are being trained in their own institution. They are being employed by Samsung. So their learning is being transferred to the industry. IIT Chennai is working with STL to the STL has a chair. They have a chair of professorship in IIT Chennai. IIT Chennai also works with sports channel, sports website to develop a tool called Superstats to follow the cricket statistics. These are just examples, right? IIT Hyderabad is working with an institution in Japan. They are working with Japan to develop some earthquake engineering models. IIT Kanpur is working with Tech Mahindra in the way to develop to conduct joint research in the domain of cybersecurity. IIT Delhi is working with ISRO. See, it's not only the private companies, not only the national companies, it can be Japan companies, or it can be ISRO, government organization can also work with the IIT Delhi. IIT Roorkee is working with Apollo Tubes. IIT Roorkee is also working with Microsoft. See here, Microsoft is actually giving them a course. They are all, both Microsoft and IIT Roorkee are together designing a course, and they are training the students, and they are sending, Microsoft is sending their own staff as a faculty members to teach them the new course. IIT Bombay is working with Tata Motors. General Mills is working with CFTRI. CFTRI is a CSIR lab. It's a national lab that is working with General Mills. General Mills is generally, they make a lot of bakery goods. So CFTRI is Food Technology Research Institution. So CFTRI and General Mills are working together. BASF is working with Bombay College of Pharmacy. It's not only, we are not only talking about IITs, even small school. Punjab Agricultural University is working with, and Pratishtha Industries is working with ICAR. Right? So many examples are there where industry is working. So we are changing, we are moving, we are definitely moving forward, and we are almost there. So Life Care Innovations Private Limited and Seth GS Medical College and KEM Hospital. See how many of them are working? Hospital, medical college, and private company. They're all working together to scale up process development for production of liposomal amphotericin B and clinical performance trials. They are all working together to develop a drug, and they're also, then our opening slide is that, right? Collaboration for innovation is new mantra for pharma, right? So they're all collaborating. Medical college, hospital, private company, all are working together to develop a technology. Similarly, Bhuma Energy Ventures is working with IIT Guwahati to pilot the scale facility for biodiesel production using waste rubber seed as raw material. So they are using waste rubber and producing biodiesel. Who are all the partners in this case? IIT Guwahati and Bhuma Engineering. Okay. Now, these are last few slides. So what else can be the best example how the nation came together, how the world came together to develop coronavirus, right? So COVID-19 really changed how the world does research in science, and how do we achieve the thing. So they all realize that the way to achieve or the way to develop a vaccine is nothing but collaborate. You collaborate across the nation, across the world. Different countries of the world came together to develop the vaccine, sorry, to develop the vaccine. I'm very sorry, coronavirus vaccine. Okay, so this is a known story. I just capture the all the facts to complete the story. So on 31st December 2019, WHO was informed about a cluster of cases of pneumonia of unknown cause detected in Wuhan, right? First it was detected in 31st December. So the Chinese authorities identified, and they said it is COVID-2, and it was decided, the virus was detected on 7th January 2020. And the disease was named as coronavirus disease and COVID-19, right? By WHO in 11th February 2020. Then they started R&D to figure out what is the reason, how do we get the vaccines, how do we get the therapeutics. Group of experts started working together. USA, Europe, Asian countries, all of them are part of this program. So actually, you remember, all the borders were sealed. You can't travel to the US, or American citizens can't come to India. So all the political leaders, what did they do? They locked their borders. Why? To ensure the safety. So political leaders have locked the things, but what did the scientists do? The scientists shattered. They shattered their borders. Scientists came forward and they all worked together and created a global collaboration unlike never in history. It never happened before. Before this pandemic, this kind of research collaboration across the globe never happened. Many experts in many countries focused only on this goal with urgency. Everyone stopped their fundamental research. Everyone stopped their basic research. Whoever could concentrate on this, they started working on this particular topic of developing a vaccine for coronavirus. Exclusive research leads to grants, promotion, and tenure. See, generally, how do the faculty work? They work exclusively, right? They don't even share their research. Because why? They want to get the promotions, they want to get the grants, they want to get the tenureship. So they really work in secret. They'll keep suspiciously holding the data. They won't publish their data. So they keep everything secretly. But now, no more secrecy. At this stage, the scientists completely shattered their egos. They completely shattered their borders. They completely gave away their promotions, their tenureship, their grants. They all work together. Ability to work collaboratively, setting aside personal academic progress is the order of the day, because it's a matter of survival. Okay, I get a promotion, but to get a promotion, I need to be alive, right? So they realized the problem. They started working together and they started developing the vaccine together. Okay, how do we do that? What do we need from the government? In such cases, what do we need? To support ongoing private and public research efforts to counter coronavirus or other pandemic, not only coronavirus, but any other pandemic, we need some support. That's what kind of support? We need a support and strength for international networks of research collaborations, including both private and public sector scientists. So somehow government should come forward. Governments should come forward and somehow support and strengthen the research collaboration across the globe. Ensure that research cooperation is maintained even in the context of national political differences. You may have political differences. Let it be, no problem. Please don't stop the scientists. Please don't interfere in scientists' work. Let them work together in spite of your political differences. Ensure that policies and regulations do not hinder effective, timely, cross-border access to and exchange of scientific information, data, physical samples, and genetic sequence. Don't bring bureaucracy. Please, this is the request to the governments the scientists made. Please do not bring any bureaucracy. We have to work together. We need to share our genetic sequences. Gene sequences have to be shared across the globe. The vaccines developed have to be shared. So please do not you make any policy that hinders the cross-border access. And the governments have to ensure not to impose regulations at national or international level that would undermine the open information exchange and legal certainty. So the scientists really requested the governments, do not impose any regulations that we will not be able to move forward with our research. So just see how the collaborative research happened. So coronavirus being sequenced by Chinese public health laboratories to fill genome data is shared. The genomic data is shared with less than 24 hours. Now I have genomic data. Isn't it easy for me to develop a vaccine? So I don't have to start from developing a genomic data. It's already been done from China. That has shared across the globe. It is put on the web. So the other scientists from different countries have taken the genomic data and they started developing the vaccine. So rapid sharing of genetic sequence worldwide enabled real-time progress in understanding the disease and allowed the scientists to develop a vaccine. Let's see, the last one is really very interesting. So we have a lab in Pittsburgh. They worked with a European country, that is Paris, and another European country, Austria. And they all worked together and got the funding from Norway-based organization. And that was funded by Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And they all came to India and they talked to Serum Institute of India. See the collaboration. Where is Pittsburgh? Where is Paris? Where is Austria? And where did they get money from? Norway. And finally, where did they come to? They came to India to develop the vaccine. So this is the research collaboration. This is a technology transfer from one place to another place that made the vaccine possible. So none of them worked in isolation. GSK, that's GlaxoSmithKline worked with Sanofi, and GSK worked with the University of Queensland, and GSK worked with Canadian. See, they have been working. The GSK, the GlaxoSmithKline worked with different countries, different universities, different companies across the globe, and they have come up with a vaccine. Okay, that is one example. And another very interesting example is, we all know that, right? This is a real case of our India. We have a Noka Robotics. It's a company in Pune. It's a startup, not even a big company. It's a startup in Pune. And in India needed ventilators extremely badly, very badly they needed. So MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, one of the premier institutions of the world, has developed a ventilator. The team of engineers, excuse me, the team of engineers, physicians, computer scientists at MIT have been working and they have developed a low-cost ventilators. They just made the design in open source. They didn't keep it. They just published their design of the ventilator in the open source. Open source is basically keep it open. You don't patent it. Do not have exclusive rights. Just open it for the public. So that was taken by Noka Robotics, and they developed the ventilators to ease the India's shortage. And this whole thing was coordinated and monitored by Dr. Deepak Padmanabhan. He's a cardiologist. He's working in Bangalore, Jayadeva Institute of Technology. Jayadeva Institute of Cardiovascular Sciences and Research. He is the key advisor on this project. So this demonstrates the power of combining improvisations, swift coordination, and speedy action of public and private institutions to provide technical know-how, ensure the supply of components, and enable clinical trials tailored to the local conditions. See, where is MIT? Where is Pune? Where is Bangalore? And finally, the ventilator is developed. So this is the collaboration. This is the transfer of technology. MIT has just developed the technology and they put it in the open source, and these youngsters from Pune, they picked up the technology, they developed the a ventilator, a low-cost ventilator, which poor Indians can afford, and so we could immediately develop. And whole thing was monitored by a doctor in Bangalore. So it's a teamwork. It's a collaborative research that made this possible. So I know about borders, but pathogens and epidemics will not know the borders. If it started in China, it reached India, it reached US, it reached everywhere the COVID thing has started everywhere. Solutions to combat this can only be found through global research cooperation and open exchange or technology transfer. So nationalist approach will not help here, and it will only slow down the world's recovery. So we have to come together. We have to jointly fight with the. This is a typical example of how the research organizations or how the academic institutions across the globe came forward to develop the technology that is need of the hour, right? So if you have any questions, I'll take the questions last 15 minutes. We can have a interactive session. If you want me to repeat any point, I will repeat. So now the floor is open. The last 15 minutes, I thought I just leave it to you people for asking questions. Ratish, how do we take it forward, Ratish? They can raise it. Yeah, please go ahead. They can chat, or they we'll do at the end of the. How do we do the question answer session? Or
Normally, we post these questions in the chat box. So if there are no questions, then we ask them to unmute their microphones and pose it directly to the resource person. So there is a question in the chat box. Just a moment, ma'am.
Yeah. Can I stop sharing?
Yes, yes, ma'am. You can stop sharing. So the question is from Mohammed Imran. Is it possible to share some books for technology transfer? So he's asking about reference books, I believe, for.
Yeah, sure. I can. I mean, offhand, I can't give you, but there are one. Actually, the book called as Technology Transfer for Innovation is available in Amazon. So you can, the book itself is called Technology Transfer for Innovation. You can just buy that book. I mean, I can, I mean, right, offhand, I can't just give you the titles of the authors, but there are lots of books available already. We are picking up. In the US, it's a big deal. It started in 1980 when the Bayh-Dole Act came into picture. The technology transfer became a big thing. No, we are, so we have a lot of books. If you are really interested, maybe Ratish, I can pass it on them to you.
Yes, ma'am, sure.
Then we can share them.
Pass it on to the participants. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. Anything else? Just feel free. You can ask me anything. Not necessarily with technology transfer. In the afternoon, we will be doing more into IPs and how do we register them IPs. Actually, I thought I'll swap the sessions. I thought I'll do first IP and then talk about technology transfer. But since you people learned yesterday about the university innovations, I thought let me not change the order. So this is basically it would have been better maybe if you understand more of IPs. Anyway, we will do that in a half an hour. We will be doing the technology, basics of the IP or different types of IP we have.
So participants, you are free to unmute your microphones and you can pose the question directly to the resource person.
Yes, that will be better.
Hello, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Ma'am, I just want to know about the exclusive or non-exclusive license. Basically, public funded institute focus on the non-exclusive licenses.
Correct.
So, if such condition is create when any institute, any public funded institute want to transfer technology transfer on the basis of exclusive licenses.
Can we do it?
I mean, possible or ऐसा करना चाहिए या नहीं?
Oh, so your question is whether can we go exclusive license?
Okay. Hi. Yes.
Yeah. So right, I just told you, right? Exclusivity need not be only one person. You want to give exclusive license in one territory or one field, you can do that, right? You don't have to give exclusive license. It doesn't mean like assignment. Assignment is dangerous. Assignment means you as a licensor, as a university will not have any rights. No one can do that technology other than the assignee. Whereas exclusive license, I just showed you the exclusive license, right? Exclusive licenses, you can have the carve outs. You can have exclusivity in particular geographical area. It could be in technology. It could be method of, you are making one product in different methods. You can give one method to one licensee. So it's possible to give for the universities as exclusive license, but broadly, you are right that we generally do only non-exclusive license. We can't favor anyone. See, this is not your money. This is the public funded money.
Yeah.
So that is the basic reason. So
Yeah.
that's how the governments are completely against assignments. They're okay with exclusive license, provided we justify why we are giving exclusive license and which area we are giving. The best mode is non-exclusive license.
So basically, we can say exclusive license can be transferred a particular geographical region or a particular person, or on the so many things, different things may be applied
Yeah,
for.
not particular person, particular territory, right?
Okay.
You can tell them you can practice only in India. You can't practice in the US. That carve out is possible. I
So-
also want to practice as a university. I also want to practice. So I can keep one. I can have a condition saying that as a university I want to take further research. So I can also practice. So these are all called carve outs.
Okay, ma'am. Exclusive license can be given to a different geographical location. Maybe.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
That's what I said. Exclusivity could be different locations, different technology, different areas of practice. It's possible.
Okay. So such type seem like that difference between non-exclusive or on exclusive on the basis of the geographical region,
Correct.
not a particular person.
No. You can't favor anyone.
Okay. Thank you.
Ma'am, just one more question as an extension to what I was saying. So wouldn't providing a non-exclusive license also promote competition over there?
True, right? That's why initially it was not very famous. I mean, it's not very successful, non-exclusive license. So it will promote competition. So you have to have your conditions in your how do you practice, how do you share the things. Your non-exclusive license is not that advantageous to the licensee. Unlike the licensee will be at I just gave an example, right? If I take a non-exclusive license, I spend so much of money, I spend so much of resources, and I develop the technology. I'm about to launch my product, and someone else also gets a non-exclusive license. See, sometimes the healthy competition is always needed for the society. Right? Healthy competition is, suppose I am the only licensee, I get an exclusive license or non-exclusive license, and I'm the only one making, and I'm selling my product at exorbitant prices. So competition is sometimes needed.
Yes, ma'am. Particularly when you say that it's the public money that's being used, and then so the customer may be actually may be rendered to double taxation. On one hand, you're collecting tax, and then you're placing
Exactly.
the products at a very high price over there. Ma'am, just one more thing regarding the public funded research that you're talking, and the technology transfer that is happening from the public funded institutes. Particularly in the developed nations, as you mentioned in one of your slides, that there are a lot of technologies that were developed by these public funded institutes. But particularly in the context of pharma, we have seen that these molecules or these pharmaceutical substances that may have been developed initially at these public funded research institutes, but then they have in fact been licensed to these big pharma companies, or they may have acquired rights, as you said, to these molecules. And in fact, the prices of these drugs, as you're aware, is exorbitantly high once it is patented. So what's the I would say, how do you see the mechanism, or is the mechanism or working correctly over there? Because you're using public funded money to develop an invention and get a patent, but ultimately it goes into the hands of the private entities, and once the product is commercialized, particularly in the context of pharmaceuticals, we find the prices are very highly priced. So how is that issue, or how can it actually be addressed over there, or what exactly are the roadblocks that we normally find in such situations?
Yeah, it's a very good question, Ratish. We have TLO monitoring, right? Technology transfer offices are monitoring that. If it's really an important drug, like very exclusive drug, and we have also government. It's a government funded money. It's a government funded research, and government has margin rights. Government has every. I mean, really now it's not bothering them in the US. They can afford the money, so really there is no question of compulsory license in the US. But government has every right to march in. Government has every right to really, if it's that threshold research and it is really critical to the public at large, okay, may not be 1 or 2%. If the really thing, government can always interfere. The first rights are given to government. Government has to say no, then only they can go. In the US, in the Bayh-Dole Act, there is a provision called as margin rights for the government. So as soon as the invention is ready, as soon as the patent is developed, the patent has to be first submitted to the government. And the government will say, okay, I'm not interested to patent this. You go ahead. So there is a control definitely by the federal government in the US.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So yeah, please, any further questions to ma'am?
Anything related to IP or anything we can just discuss. And then we have another 10 minutes.
Ma'am, just one more thing, since I don't find people. There is Dr. Rekha, I believe she wants to ask something. So Dr. Rekha, you can go ahead.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, good morning, ma'am. This is Rekha.
Hi, Rekha.
I just would like to know how the new IPR policy of 2016 is really been implemented effectively in the educational institutions and the universities, the effectiveness.
It just started, Rekha. So that's what 2016 the policy has been done. 2019 they have given the model guidelines. So we are moving, of course, slowly, but we have the model guidelines. It will be reaching. I don't think it reached the universities yet, but it has been developed, drafted the model guidelines. There, unfortunately, I can't share the model guidelines for 4 or 5 pages guidelines. It's very, very clearly written that how a university should go ahead. What is IP? They define each. Who is an assignee, who is an inventor, what is copyrights, everything is written in very clearly in the model guidelines. Hopefully they reach you soon, and hopefully we can take it forward from there. It's moving. Because 2016, the policy has been done. 2019, we have this model guidelines. CPAM is there. Please go ahead.
Because the incubation centers and others are picking up. Like the government is promoting the startups and everything to line with the IPR policy and others. So like there are parallel measures that are being taken up by the government, but like coordinating them and implementing in the universities, like effectiveness, like isn't it a matter of concern?
It is. We are, that's what, unlike the university of the developed countries where they have proper infrastructure, how many engineering colleges? Bangalore has private engineering colleges in every street. Every street has a Bangalore engineering college in Bangalore. They have 4 or 5 rooms and they call it as an engineering college. So where do we get the infrastructure there? So that's an concern. But I think, we have to take it with a positive spirit and move on. So let's see how it reaches. We are, as you already mentioned, that incubation centers are being promoted, MSMEs are being encouraged, startups are being encouraged. How much funding? I work for a law firm, and we have to draft the patent application free of cost for a startup. Okay. Right? So government will pay us. Now I do all the hard work of provisional patent application, complete patent application. I file the patent application. It may be granted, it may not be granted. I will get money as a law firm from the government only when the patent is granted. My resource, my time is not, the government is encouraging the startups that way. So it was not, we are all called facilitators. So we publish ourselves. If I'm an Indian patent agent, I publish on the government website. So any inventor, any middle of the night, he can call me and say that I have an invention, you file for me. And if I say, no, I can't file, they go back to the government and government issues me a notice. It's happening. It's really happening. We do so many. Bangalore is again one of the hub of a lot of startups. So we work for a lot of startups with the government. So this is happening. So hopefully that will reach to the universities too. If not, then why do we get the model guidelines in 2019? If you have any access, just Google it. You can see the model guidelines of 2019, where everything is very, very clearly mentioned. What the university should do. They have to have an IP cell. So you are right. How do we account someone? Okay, how will the government go behind a university for not having an IP cell? Will the government go behind and ask them, where is your incubation center? So they are doing now. IITs all picked up. The IITs, IISc are doing now. I mean, yesterday I just heard Ratish speaking about their university. So many things they are doing. Wonderful things they are doing. Yesterday I just heard Dr. Ratish. He says I didn't. Unfortunately, he asked me to join only at 9:15, so I missed his introduction. But then last 10 minutes, I heard him saying that how many things they are doing. They are doing a lot of work and novelty searching and all they are doing. So universities are picking up. Whether all universities, whether all universities come onto the platform and be on the same platform at the same strength, questionable. Now all IITs, see IIT Hyderabad is just a recent one, right? 2008, very recently started, 2008 or 2009. Now they are working so well.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah,
I
thank you
think
very much, ma'am.
as you said, it's a matter of time, because probably we have a policy in place. I think that's the first positive step that we need to
Exactly
actually look at. So I think
Yeah.
at least you have a framework. Then the remaining
we have
is
guidelines now, not
implementation.
only framework,
Yeah,
not only policy,
yeah.
we have guidelines.
Guidelines also.
16
So
to
I
9.
think
It took 3 years to get to the guidelines.
right. Well, ma'am, to answer that, I mean, just to add to what ma'am was saying, you can approach institutes which have already an established IPR cells within academic framework, such as us. So we have also been facilitating the setting up of IPR cells across various colleges and institutes in Kerala. But the downside over here is, I mean, because setting up an IPR facilitation cell gives you some credits while your university or academic institution is being evaluated by these agencies, accrediting agencies such as NAC. But still, you find these are what I have noticed is these are only for namesake that you're establishing them. So unless you have an incubation unit, which may still be working more towards creating awareness or having these capacity building programs. So one way you can start off is have these awareness programs, and based on that, move on to the next stage of developing capacity. So if you require any support from our side, we'll be more than happy to help you in establishing an IP cell at your institute or incubation unit, or we can also extend our services to you. So that way, I think as an academic institution, we can do that because we have been practicing it for the last 5 years. So in a lot of avenues, we have been able to help out not just people from within the university framework, but also local inventors as well as various startups. So we'll be more than happy to help. It's only a matter of time that we start implementing, because I think these guidelines, these frameworks, the policies are already in place, and then all we need to do is try to implement them. So implementation should be actually is probably the responsibility of the institute or the person over there who is responsible for carrying out such activities. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you
That's
very
very
much.
nice.
Yeah,
Dr.
thank
Rekha,
you,
where
ma'am.
are you working, Rekha?
I'm working for Narayanamma Institute of Technology and Science for Women in Hyderabad.
Oh, very good. Okay. Very nice. So that's what you can keep in touch with either Ratish, or if you have any patenting requirements, you can approach any of the people, any of the law firms. They're really, we have a, I mean, every law firm comes forward to academic institutions with a different fee structure.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you, sir.
So anything else, the last 5 minutes?
So I think, ma'am, we don't find any
take a break.
questions. So maybe I think it's time for
break.
Proposing the vote of thanks. Yeah, please, Shweta.
Yes. Thank you, ma'am. Now I would like to invite Smriti and Pradeep, second sem IPR PhD, IUC IPRS, to deliver the vote of thanks on behalf of everyone.
Thank you, Shweta. First and foremost, I would like to thank Dr. M.V. Remini, Associate Partner Lexorbis, for taking time out of her busy schedule to enlighten us with her knowledge. Her observation as to how collaboration for innovation should be the mantra for many industries, including the pharma, was very insightful. Her comparative insights as to how different nations from the West as well as the East responded to the US success on university industry collaboration was very informative. According to me, the biggest takeaway from the session was the discussion as to how the world came together to fight the coronavirus. The real life examples that were brought to our notice reinforced how important it is for the scientific community to work together beyond physical and geographical borders. Thank you so much, ma'am. I would also like to thank the coordinators of the session, Dr. Ajit Ratish and Dr. Asha, and also, last but not the least, all the participants who actively took an interest in the session. Thank you.